The evening had just begun to cool when Evelyn set out for her walk. The streets of her town were quiet, save for the rustling of laundry lines and the faint chime of wind bells swaying from porches. She didn't have a destination in mind, she never did. Evening walks were her way of unwinding, her way of letting the world slow until she could feel the edges of her thoughts soften. Tonight, a striped cat joined her. It appeared from nowhere, padding silently beside her, its paws so quiet that Evelyn hardly heard them against the cobblestones. When she paused, it paused. When she turned, it circled her ankles with the easy confidence of a creature who had already decided she was worth following. "You've chosen me tonight, have you?" Evelyn asked softly, crouching down to scratch behind its ears. The cat's fur was surprisingly warm, as though it had been resting in a patch of sunlight. Its golden eyes blinked at her, patient and knowing. They walked together for a while, the cat leading more than following. It guided her through alleys she'd never paid attention to, past ivy-clad fences and down a gentle slope toward the fields. The sound of cicadas thickened as they went, a chorus that pressed gently against the silence. Eventually, the cat stopped at a gate, an old iron thing set into a hedge of hawthorn. Evelyn tilted her head. She had walked this road before, she thought, but she had never noticed a gate here. It was small, barely wide enough for one person to pass through, with scrolls of rust curling along the bars. The cat sat, tail curled neatly around its paws, and looked at her expectantly. "Well," Evelyn murmured, "I suppose there's no harm in looking." She reached for the latch. The iron was cool beneath her hand, and when she pushed, the gate gave a soft creak, like a sigh from something long asleep. Beyond it lay a garden glowing with quiet light. Evelyn stepped inside, and the change was immediate. The air felt warmer, softer, as if dusk had slowed down here, refusing to darken entirely. Lanterns hung from branches, their glass bellies glowing with a honey-colored light. Some floated above the grass, bobbing gently as though tethered to invisible strings. Others rested in the crooks of trees, their glow seeping like spilled paint across the bark. The cat trotted ahead, weaving between patches of clover. Evelyn followed at a slower pace, her steps hushed against the mossy ground. She reached for the nearest lantern. It was no bigger than her palm, glass-shaped like a teardrop. When she touched it, the surface was warm, and within, she thought she glimpsed movement, as though tiny specks of memory were drifting through it, slow as snow. She leaned close and thought she heard something, not words, not exactly, but a hum, like the distant memory of a lullaby. She drew back, blinking, uncertain whether the sound was real or only in her imagination. "Who tends this place?" she asked aloud, her voice hushed out of instinct. The lantern swayed faintly in answer, though it might have only been the breeze. The path curved past a small pond. Lanterns floated above its surface, each reflection doubled in water, until the pond looked like a sky turned upside down. Evelyn sat on the edge, the cat curling beside her, purring deep and steady. She breathed slowly, letting the sound fill her chest with calm. There was no urgency here. No destination. The garden existed simply to be walked through, to be sat in, to be watched. Evelyn closed her eyes for a while and let the hum of the lanterns settle in her bones. When she finally stood, lanterns shifted with her, glowing brighter, as though glad she had come. She smiled faintly, unsure why, and walked deeper still. Deeper into the garden, Evelyn found a willow tree. Its branches swayed low, heavy with lanterns that dangled like fruits of light. Beneath it stood a wooden bench, smoothed by age and softened by moss. The cat leapt up first, curling in a tidy circle as though it had always belonged there. Evelyn sat beside it, her skirt brushing the wood, and tilted her head back to see the way lantern light trembled against the willow leaves. The glow shifted with the wind, sending ripples of light across her face. "This place feels like it's waiting," she whispered. The cat purred. For a long while, Evelyn only sat. She thought of the town behind her, the houses with their drawn curtains, the clinking of dishes in kitchens, the steady rhythm of ordinary life. And yet here she was, in a place so quiet it might not belong to the same world at all. A lantern drifted downward, hovering just before her. She reached out. The glass was warm in her hand, and when she lifted it, the faint hum inside grew clearer. This time, she could almost make out a phrase, like a voice telling a story too soft to catch in full. She closed her eyes, listening, but it slipped away like water through fingers. When she opened them again, the lantern floated free, drifting back into the willow branches. Evelyn smiled, though she did not know why. The garden asked nothing of her. It only offered stillness. When at last she rose to leave, she glanced back at the bench beneath the willow. The cat was still there, watching her with its golden eyes, as though to say, "You can come back anytime." And Evelyn knew she would. The next evening, Evelyn found herself thinking of the garden before the sun had even set. She waited until twilight wrapped the rooftops in indigo, then slipped quietly from her home. The cat was there again, as though it had been waiting for her all day, tail flicking in a measured rhythm. Together they returned to the iron gate. This time, Evelyn was not surprised when the lanterns greeted her like old friends. Their glow seemed to brighten as she stepped inside. But tonight, she was not alone. At the far end of the path, standing beneath an arch of ivy, was an old man. His hair was silver, his coat long and buttoned though the air was warm. He held a lantern on a staff, and the light wavered gently with his movements. Evelyn hesitated, but the man smiled, lines softening around his eyes. "Ah," he said, his voice like a page being turned, "you found your way here. Is it yours?" Evelyn asked, gesturing to the glowing garden. He chuckled softly. "No more mine than the stars belong to a shepherd. I simply keep watch. The lanterns, they look after themselves, most of the time." The cat twined around his ankles, purring, as though to confirm his words. Evelyn approached slowly. "Why are they here?" The man tapped his staff against the moss. "Lanterns hold what the world forgets. Little pieces of stories, lost whispers, things too small for memory but too dear to vanish. When night falls, they shine with what they've kept." Evelyn's chest warmed at his words. She thought of the hum she had heard, the near words. It made sense. He tilted his head, studying her kindly. "You're welcome to visit. The garden doesn't mind company." Evelyn returned to the willow bench. The cat leapt into her lap this time, heavy with warmth. She stroked its back, her eyes tracing the lights overhead. The old man, the lantern keeper, wandered nearby but did not intrude. From time to time he touched a lantern gently with his staff, coaxing it higher or lower, as though tending to bees. One lantern floated close to Evelyn. She cupped her hands, and it settled there as if it had been waiting. Inside, a swirl of light shifted, then steadied. A faint tune slipped into her ears, notes slow, lilting, tender. It was a song she half recognized, something her grandmother had once hummed as she baked bread. Evelyn felt her throat tighten with a strange kind of sweetness. "It remembers for you," said the lantern keeper, approaching quietly. "I thought I'd forgotten this song," Evelyn whispered. He nodded. "The world forgets, but nothing is truly lost. The lanterns catch it. That is their way." Evelyn listened until the tune faded. When she let go, the lantern rose gently back into the branches. She felt lighter, though she couldn't say why. The cat stretched and yawned in her lap, utterly content. Evelyn laughed softly, rubbing behind its ears. On her third visit, Evelyn noticed something new. Beyond the willow tree, where she had not walked before, a path of clover stretched into the deeper garden. Tiny lanterns lined the way, glowing like stars spilled into the grass. She followed, her steps careful, the cat trotting just ahead. The clover brushed her ankles, cool and fragrant. She bent to pick a sprig and noticed tiny blossoms tucked among the leaves, their petals like paper lanterns themselves. The path curved to a clearing where lanterns swirled in slow circles, moving of their own accord. They drifted above a low stone wall, weaving patterns that reminded her of constellations. "Do they always move like that?" she asked aloud. The lantern keeper, appearing as though he had always been near, shook his head. Only when they're full of laughter. Someone once left a great deal of it here, and the lanterns have been dancing ever since. Evelyn smiled, watching their gentle spin. She laughed quietly herself, and for a moment, the lanterns seemed to sway faster, as though laughing with her. The night deepened, but it did not matter. In the lantern garden, time was soft, pliant, almost forgotten. Evelyn sat on the low wall, the cat pressing against her leg, and let herself simply be. Evelyn followed the clover path until it curved back toward the pond she had seen before. Tonight, it shimmered differently. The lanterns above it were brighter, and their reflections in the water seemed deeper, as though the pond led to another sky entirely. She crouched at the edge, peering closer. Her reflection was there, but not quite the same. This version of herself was younger, hair loose and windblown, eyes bright with the kind of wonder she remembered from childhood. The younger Evelyn lifted a lantern in her hand, though she herself held none. The glass glowed with soft gold, and as she watched, her reflection smiled. Evelyn whispered, "What is it you're holding for me?" The cat padded to the water's edge, dipping a paw into the surface. Ripples spread, and the image dissolved into shimmering fragments. The lantern keeper's voice drifted from behind her. "The pond shows you what still waits within. Sometimes, it's a memory. Sometimes, a dream not yet lived." Evelyn rose slowly. Her chest felt both heavy and light at once. She wasn't sure she wanted all her forgotten pieces at once, but there was comfort in knowing they rested here. The cat sneezed delicately and rubbed against her leg, reminding her to stay grounded. Evelyn laughed softly. "Yes, yes. One thing at a time." The next evening, Evelyn arrived with a sense of expectation. The air was warmer, carrying the scent of honeysuckle. She found the lantern keeper waiting by the gate, his staff resting against his shoulder. "Do you walk every night?" she asked. He chuckled. "Not always. But sometimes the lanterns like company. And sometimes, so do I." They walked together along the mossy path. Wherever they stepped, tiny lanterns sparked to life on the ground, little globes no bigger than acorns, glowing just long enough to mark their steps before fading. Evelyn watched in delight. "They follow us. They guide," the keeper corrected gently. "Sometimes we forget that walking itself is a kind of magic. Every step is worth remembering, so the lanterns keep track for a while." Evelyn slowed her pace, savoring the glow that flared with each footfall. The cat bounded ahead, chasing the lights as they flickered, then darted back with eyes bright. At the willow bench, the lanterns faded. Evelyn sat, heart calm and light. "It feels," she said, "like the garden itself is alive." The keeper inclined his head. "Perhaps it is." One morning, Evelyn thought about the garden even as sunlight streamed through her curtains. She went about her errands, buying bread, carrying home apples from the market, but the memory of the lanterns lingered like perfume on her skin. At the bakery, she paused. A lantern glowed faintly above the doorway, small and dusty, but unmistakable. She blinked in surprise. Had it always been there? Inside, the baker greeted her warmly. "Morning, Evelyn." "The usual?" "Yes, please," she said, but her eyes flicked toward the lantern again. When she asked, the baker laughed. "That old thing? Don't know where it came from. Been hanging there since before my time. Folks say it keeps the bread from ever going stale too fast." Evelyn smiled knowingly. She reached for her loaf, the crust warm against her hands, and thought, the lanterns aren't just in the garden, then. As she walked home, she wondered how many other lights she had overlooked in the ordinary corners of her town. The garden was especially quiet that evening. The crickets were hushed, the breeze soft as breath. Evelyn found the lantern keeper seated on the stone wall by the clover path, staff resting across his knees. The cat was curled beside him, its tail twitching lazily. "You always seem to be here," she said, sitting nearby. He smiled faintly. "Perhaps it's the other way around." You come when I am here. She tilted her head. But, do you live here? The keeper looked up at the lanterns spinning overhead. In a way. I've been with them a long while. Longer than most things last. Doesn't it get lonely? He considered the question, then shook his head. No. The lanterns are never silent. Each one carries a fragment of someone's laughter, or a song, or a dream. To listen is to have company. And now, he added with a warm glance, I have you as well. Evelyn felt her cheeks warm. She let the silence stretch, and in it she heard faint whispers from the lanterns. A child's giggle, the strum of a lute, the echo of rain. She whispered, maybe it's not loneliness we fear, but forgetting. The keeper's eyes softened. Just so. The cat had never left Evelyn's side since that first night, but now it began to act differently. As she followed the mossy path, it darted ahead, tail high, pausing every few steps to look back impatiently. What is it? Evelyn laughed. Show me, then. It led her deeper into the garden, toward a small alcove hidden by flowering shrubs. Lanterns glowed low to the ground here, scattered like pebbles. In the center of the space was a shallow dish of water, shimmering faintly in the lantern light. The cat leapt onto the rim, looking down. Evelyn knelt beside it. When she peered into the water, she saw not her reflection but the cat's. Except, this cat had wings. Lantern-light wings, soft and translucent, folded neatly at its sides. Her breath caught. She turned to the cat beside her. It blinked lazily, as though nothing were amiss, then nudged her hand with its head. You're not just an ordinary cat, she murmured. It purred in response, the sound vibrating like a lantern's hum. Evelyn laughed softly. I suppose I should have known. From the shadows, the keeper's voice drifted, every guide has its secret. That night, as Evelyn prepared to leave the garden, one of the smaller lanterns floated toward her. It hovered just before her, pulsing faintly as if asking permission. Tentatively, she cupped her hands. The lantern settled there, warm and light, and then, quite impossibly, it shrank, until it was small enough to fit in her pocket. Startled, she looked at the keeper. It has chosen you, he said, smiling. Some lanterns wish to travel. They carry something you'll need, though you may not know what until later. Evelyn touched her pocket, feeling the faint glow through the fabric. Will it be all right away from here? He nodded. The garden is not a place of walls. The lanterns belong wherever light is needed. She walked home beneath the stars, hand resting lightly over her pocket. The tiny glow warmed her like a secret, a promise she could carry anywhere. And for the first time in many years, she felt no fear of forgetting. The morning after receiving her pocket lantern, Evelyn walked to the market with an unusual lightness. The sun was warm, the chatter of vendors lively, and yet she kept noticing small glimmers she had never seen before. Above the fishmonger's stall hung a faintly glowing lantern, drifting lazily among the gulls. Evelyn paused, watching it sway. Inside, she thought she heard the distant sound of waves and laughter, children playing by the sea. At the fruit seller's booth, another lantern pulsed faintly as he arranged apples into neat pyramids. Evelyn leaned closer, and for a heartbeat she could smell orchards in bloom, hear the rustle of leaves heavy with fruit. She whispered to herself, they're everywhere. The cat, who had followed her despite its disdain for crowded streets, flicked its tail knowingly. Later, carrying a basket of apples, she passed the baker's shop again. The lantern there glowed brighter than before. She wondered if her noticing gave it strength. Or if the lanterns had simply waited for her eyes to open. That evening, Evelyn was surprised to find the lantern keeper waiting outside her gate. His staff rested lightly in his hand, lantern swaying from its top like a patient star. You came to me, she asked. He smiled. The garden wished you to know it can stretch further than its hedges. They walked together down her street. It was quiet, most windows already shuttered. But as they moved, faint lanterns appeared, above doorways, tucked in alleys, even hovering briefly near chimneys before drifting on. Do people not see them? Evelyn asked. Some do, the keeper said. Most look past. It is easier to think the glow is only moonlight, or fireflies. But those who carry wonder in their pockets, he nodded toward the faint glow at her side. They notice more. Evelyn felt the tiny lantern warm against her, as though agreeing. When they reached the edge of town, the keeper inclined his head. Tonight, you'll dream differently. The lanterns will make sure of it. She felt reassured, though she wasn't sure why. That night, Evelyn dreamt vividly. She stood in the lantern garden, but it was vast, stretching further than she had ever seen. Lanterns filled the air like constellations, glowing in endless patterns. She reached for one. Instead of light, she held a memory, her own voice, younger, reciting a poem she had written as a child. Another lantern revealed her father's laugh, booming and warm. Another carried the sound of rain on the roof during her first night alone in her cottage. The cat sat on the stone wall, lantern wings unfurled, watching her. Its eyes gleamed as though to say, all of this belongs to you still. The lantern keeper appeared in the dream, his voice low and steady. Not all forgotten things are lost. Some are simply waiting to be remembered when you are ready. Evelyn looked around, tears shining in her dream self's eyes. Then, I'll never truly lose anything, will I? No, he said, lanterns swirling gently overhead. Not while the lights remain. When she woke, the glow from her pocket lantern was steady, as though it too had been dreaming alongside her. Evelyn's neighbor, Mrs. Harrow, was known for her roses. Her garden spilled with them in every shade of red and pink, their perfume drifting into Evelyn's own window when the breeze was right. One afternoon, as Evelyn returned from the market, she noticed a faint lantern glowing just above the rose trellis. Its light shimmered pink, like petals caught in sunlight. Mrs. Harrow looked up from her pruning shears and smiled. Evelyn, dear. Would you like to take some roses home? Evelyn hesitated, glancing at the lantern. They're beautiful, she said softly, accepting a small bundle. Then, curious, she asked, do you ever see a light above them? Mrs. Harrow blinked, then laughed lightly. Oh, I suppose I've thought the blossoms glow sometimes. Especially at dusk. But I've never looked too closely. Evelyn held the roses to her chest, heart quickened. She feels it, she thought. Even if she doesn't call it a lantern. That evening, Evelyn placed the roses in a vase by her window. The lantern above the trellis pulsed gently, as though in gratitude. The cat was restless. Instead of curling at Evelyn's feet while she read, it prowled the garden, pausing often to stare toward the woods beyond the cottages. Finally, with a soft chirrup, it bounded down the path, tail high. Evelyn sighed and followed, lantern in her pocket casting the faintest glow. They passed through hedges and into the line of birches, pale trunks glowing like lanterns themselves in the moonlight. There, deep between the trees, Evelyn saw dozens of lanterns strung low to the ground, swaying gently as though waiting. The cat sat proudly, wings flickering in the shadows. Evelyn realized the lanterns formed a path, leading deeper, inviting her on. What is this place? She whispered. From behind, the keeper's voice was calm. Another garden. Smaller. Tucked away for those who wander farther. The lanterns wish to show you it exists. Evelyn felt both wonder and comfort. The world was stitched with gardens she had never known. The following morning, Evelyn visited the candle maker, an old man with clever hands who always smelled faintly of beeswax and lavender. As she browsed his shelves, she noticed a faint lantern above his counter. This one flickered like candlelight, steady and warm. Master Corwin, she said softly, do your candles ever burn differently? As though they carry something more? The candle maker chuckled. You've noticed, have you? Some flames seem to hum when I light them. People say it's just my imagination, but I've never minded. Imagination makes life kinder. Evelyn smiled, touched by his quiet certainty. She bought a pair of candles and left with the sense that perhaps Corwin saw more than he admitted. That night, when she lit one, the flame burned steady and true, and for a moment she swore she heard faint laughter from the lantern in her pocket. Evelyn often walked to the river at dusk, carrying her basket and sometimes the cat. Though it disliked being lifted, and would leap free after a short while. One evening she noticed the lanterns had gathered above the water. They floated in loose clusters, their reflections shimmering like double constellations. The current tugged at them gently, but they never sank. They seemed content to hover just above the surface. A fisherman on the opposite bank waved to her. "Strange lights tonight, eh?" he called. "Do you see them too?" she asked eagerly. The man scratched his head. "I see something. Like the water's glowing, maybe? Never seen the river like this." Evelyn smiled to herself. She knew better, but she didn't correct him. Instead, she sat on the bank and watched the lanterns drift like slow stars, until the first fireflies of evening blinked among them, impossible to tell apart. The cat purred beside her, wings faintly visible in the lantern light, as though it belonged to both worlds at once. The bakery was warm as always, rich with the scent of cinnamon and honey. Evelyn stepped inside for her usual loaf, but stopped short when she noticed a lantern glowing above the counter. It was brighter than most, cheerful, golden, pulsing in time with the clatter of trays and laughter of the baker, who was singing as he worked. When Evelyn paid, she asked softly, "Do you ever feel as though your bread carries joy with it?" The baker grinned, brushing flour from his hands. "Ah, that's the secret, isn't it? Dough only rises well if the kitchen's full of laughter. I've always believed bread remembers who needs it." Evelyn's chest warmed. She left with her loaf and a small honey cake, feeling that she had not only eaten but shared in a lantern's glow. That evening, as she broke the bread, her tiny pocket lantern hummed faintly, as though savoring the joy as well. News spread of a small festival to be held at the town square. Not the grand midsummer fair, but a quieter gathering. A few stalls, some musicians, lanterns strung on poles to light the cobbles. Evelyn attended, carrying her pocket lantern tucked close. As the fiddlers played and children danced, she noticed faint glows above many stalls. A lantern pulsed over the cider stand, another above a woman weaving garlands of flowers. "Do you see them?" she whispered to the cat, who had slunk along behind her. The cat mewed and flicked its winged tail, as if to say, "They've always been here." For a moment, Evelyn imagined what the townsfolk might feel, perhaps a warmth in their laughter, a sudden comfort in the music, a sense that the night held more than its surface. They might not call them lanterns, but they carried the glow all the same. As the festival wound down, Evelyn sat on the fountain's edge, watching the lanterns drift above the square. The keeper appeared briefly at her side, his lantern steady. "You see now," he murmured, "the garden is not only in one place. It blooms wherever light is tended." Evelyn's heart swelled with quiet understanding. Evelyn returned to the garden that evening with a curious excitement, her pocket lantern warm against her side. The cat led her as usual, weaving through clover and moss, but tonight the path seemed subtly different. Lanterns hung lower, drifting closer, casting pools of light on the ground as though guiding her steps. At the willow bench, the lantern keeper awaited. His eyes sparkled with quiet mischief. "The garden has been speaking to you," he said softly, voice like the rustle of leaves. I feel it," Evelyn admitted, glancing at the lanterns above. They swayed gently, as if nodding, some dipping closer in delicate arcs. "But what does it want from me?" He shrugged lightly. "Nothing harsh. Only that you listen, and perhaps carry a little of what it tends beyond these walls. The garden has noticed you, Evelyn. It trusts you." The cat leapt onto her lap, wings fluttering faintly. Evelyn laughed softly. "Me? Trust me?" The lanterns pulsed in agreement, warm and patient. For a moment, she imagined the garden as a living creature, leaning in, inviting her into its quiet, patient heartbeat. The next few evenings were different. Evelyn noticed subtleties she had missed before, how lanterns bent toward those who needed comfort, how the smaller one seemed shy, waiting to be noticed. She began carrying her pocket lantern through town, not hidden, but held gently in her palm. She paused outside the candle-maker's shop, where the lantern above the counter flickered brightly at her approach. "Do you see how it leans toward you?" Corwin asked. "It wants warmth. Some lights are shy, but they seek those who notice." Evelyn nodded slowly. "Like the garden," she murmured. She spent the evening watching her lantern respond, hovering close to a tired child's window, dipping near the baker's bread tray, brushing against the rose trellis as she passed. Every movement was gentle, deliberate, like a whisper rather than a command. The cat watched, ever patient, its own wings shimmering faintly. "It's teaching me," Evelyn said softly, "how to notice, how to care, even in the smallest ways." One evening, Evelyn stood at the garden gate, lantern in hand, watching the sunset stain the fields gold and amber. The cat purred beside her, eyes gleaming. The lantern keeper emerged from the shadows, staff in hand, lanterns swaying around him like attentive pupils. "You're ready," he said quietly. "The garden asks little, but it asks it fully. Not tasks or chores, but presence, care, the softest kind of attention." Evelyn's heart thumped gently. "So, I'm not just visiting anymore?" "No," he said. "You belong here, too. Not as a keeper, not yet, but as a friend, a guide for the lights wherever they may go." The lantern in her hand glowed warmer, as if sighing in contentment. Evelyn smiled, feeling an unfamiliar yet soothing sense of responsibility. It was quiet, not pressing, and yet it mattered. She leaned down to stroke the cat, feeling its warmth and soft wings, and knew the garden was right. She could carry this gentle magic into the world beyond the gate. The evening air held a promise, soft as moss underfoot, that every lantern, every glow, every whisper of light had found someone who could listen. And Evelyn would. Evelyn carried her pocket lantern through the town square at dusk, careful to move slowly, letting its light brush over the cobblestones. Small wonders seemed to follow her. A child paused mid-chase, gazing at a drifting glow above a fountain. An elderly man smiled as the light brushed against his shoulder, as if nudging memory awake. The lantern pulsed gently, a heartbeat in her palm, reminding her of the garden's trust. Evelyn felt a thrill. This wasn't showing off. It was gifting, a quiet invitation for people to notice the little beauties they usually overlooked. The cat padded alongside her, wings flickering faintly. "It's easy to forget," she murmured, "that small things can be big, if you see them right." A faint humming rose from the lantern, like the echo of laughter from the garden itself. Evelyn smiled. Somewhere, the lantern keeper was nodding quietly. Mrs. Harrow, tending her rose trellis in the fading light, looked up. "Evelyn, dear, is that a lantern in your hand?" Evelyn hesitated, then nodded, holding it gently. "It's something the garden gave me. I think it wants me to share its light." Mrs. Harrow's eyes softened, not with disbelief but with recognition. "Ah. Then perhaps it's chosen the right person. Roses need care, light, attention, as do people." The lantern hovered over the blooms, warming their petals. Evelyn realized she wasn't keeping this magic for herself. She was learning how to tend it in small, meaningful ways. It was about noticing, nurturing, and letting quiet joy bloom wherever possible. That evening, Evelyn returned to the garden. Lanterns swayed overhead like a slow tide, the pocket lantern in her hand warm and insistent. The keeper smiled at her, staff lightly resting on the path. "You're learning," he said softly. "Not all light can be kept in gardens or jars. Some must travel. You are the bridge." Evelyn felt a gentle shiver of understanding. The cat twined around her ankles, purring as if agreeing. She looked around at the soft lantern glow, inhaled the mint and chamomile air, and whispered, I will try." The keeper inclined his head, eyes reflecting the warm lights. "Then the garden and the town will breathe together. Quietly, gently, one lantern at a time." The garden seemed to sigh with approval, a wave of golden light drifting across the path, brushing Evelyn's face with warmth. Evelyn walked past the old schoolhouse on her way home, the pocket lantern pulsing softly in her hand. A few children lingered after classes, laughing and chasing one another. She paused, noticing a faint glow above the swings, hovering like a tiny star. "Do you see that?" she whispered to the cat. The children stopped mid-chase, blinking. One of them pointed upward. "Is that a light?" Evelyn smiled, holding the lantern high. "It's just a lantern, shining for anyone who needs it." The children giggled, fascinated, as another lantern floated near the sandbox. She realized it wasn't about magic for spectacle, it was about giving others permission to notice beauty. The lantern hummed softly, vibrating with quiet joy, as if acknowledging her understanding. The cat twined around her legs, purring. Evelyn felt a warmth bloom in her chest. The garden's magic could travel farther than its gate, as long as someone cared to carry it. That evening, Evelyn strolled slowly through the town's cobbled streets, the pocket lantern warm in her hand. Small lights began to appear in quiet corners, above the bakery, near the well, in alleyways overlooked in daylight. Each seemed to respond to her presence, tipping slightly toward her as she passed. She noticed Mrs. Harrow's lantern hovering over her rose trellis, nodding gently with the wind. The baker's lantern twinkled faintly at the corner of her eye, and even the candle maker's flame seemed to shimmer in rhythm with her steps. The lantern keeper appeared beside her at the edge of town. "Do you see?" he asked. "The garden blooms wherever light is tended. You don't need walls or gates. You only need care." Evelyn held her lantern close. "It feels like giving someone a small gift, without asking for anything in return." The keeper nodded. "Exactly. Some magic is quiet like that. Small, unnoticed, yet enough to change the night." The cat leapt onto a low wall, tail flicking, watching a lantern hover over a sleeping dog. Evelyn smiled. "I think I understand now." The following day, Evelyn noticed Mr. Bramble, the widower who lived alone on the edge of town, sitting quietly by his window. Something tugged at her heart. That evening, she approached his house slowly, lantern in hand. The pocket lantern floated gently above the doorstep, pulsing softly. She knocked lightly. "Evelyn?" Mr. Bramble's voice sounded surprised. "I thought you might like a little light tonight," she said quietly. He stepped outside and gazed at the lantern hovering in the evening air, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "I haven't seen anything like that in years." "It's nothing much," she murmured, "just a little glow for anyone who needs it." The lantern hummed softly, wrapping the small courtyard in warmth. Mr. Bramble's eyes shone, and for a moment, Evelyn realized that this was what the garden had been teaching her all along. Magic is gentle, not loud. It is given freely, yet it changes everything it touches. The cat curled at her feet, purring as if to say, "Yes. You're learning." Evelyn wandered to the town library one late afternoon, the pocket lantern tucked safely in her coat. The cat padded beside her, tail flicking lazily. Inside, lanterns glowed faintly above shelves of books, unnoticed by most visitors. The light hovered near worn spines, illuminating forgotten corners. Evelyn traced her fingers along a row of old tales, smiling at how each seemed to respond to her presence, flickering softly as if recognizing her touch. The librarian, Mrs. Penrose, peered at the floating lights with a quiet smile. "Ah, you've brought the glow again," she said softly. "It seems to know just where to settle." Evelyn held the lantern near a small reading nook. "It's for anyone who needs a little warmth while they read," she said. A child sitting cross-legged with a book looked up, eyes wide. The lantern drifted closer, bathing the page in gentle honey light. The cat curled around Evelyn's feet, purring. She realized the garden's magic was not limited to the outdoors. It could settle wherever quiet attention was given, illuminating both minds and hearts. That evening, Evelyn followed the soft notes of a violin drifting through the town. A small lantern bobbed in rhythm with the melody, as though dancing to the tune. She followed it to the square, where a street musician played under the glow of a few scattered lanterns. Evelyn set her pocket lantern on a nearby bench. It pulsed gently, matching the rhythm of the music. Passers-by paused, some swaying lightly, others smiling quietly at the unexpected warmth in the night. The musician, a young man with tousled hair, glanced at the lantern and chuckled softly. "It's like the night is singing with me," he said. Evelyn nodded. "Sometimes, the lights carry the song for everyone who needs to hear it." The cat leapt onto the bench beside her lantern, wings flickering in time with the melody. Evelyn felt a gentle understanding. The lantern's magic was not only comfort, it could carry the rhythm and heart of the town, uniting small moments of quiet joy. The next evening, the lantern keeper joined Evelyn as she strolled through the quiet streets, lantern in hand. The cat led the way, tail high. "You're learning quickly," the keeper said, voice low and steady. "Not just to notice the lights, but to understand what they carry: joy, memory, hope." Evelyn nodded, feeling the pulse of the pocket lantern beneath her palm. "I think I'm beginning to understand that caring is enough," she said softly. "I don't need to make them dance or do anything fancy. Just presence." The keeper smiled. "Exactly. Presence is the truest form of magic. And when you bring it gently to others, it grows without effort." They walked in companionable silence, lanterns appearing quietly along their path, above doorways, near benches, tucked into nooks where shadows lingered. Evelyn realized that the town was subtly alive with these quiet lights, each one a whisper of the garden's calm, carried carefully by her hands and heart. The cat paused, wings flickering faintly, then nudged her palm. Evelyn laughed softly. "Yes, I understand. I'll keep walking, every night if I must." The keeper's eyes twinkled. "And the lanterns will walk with you." One evening, Evelyn paused outside the bakery, noticing the warm glow spilling from the windows. Inside, the baker kneaded dough, humming softly, while a small lantern hovered above the counter. Evelyn placed her pocket lantern on the ledge beside it. The two lights pulsed in harmony, warm and golden. The baker looked up and smiled. "Ah, you've brought the glow with you again. The bread seems happier tonight." Evelyn laughed quietly. "It listens," she said softly, stroking the cat, which had curled at her feet. "Just like everything else." The baker nodded, setting a small loaf aside for her. "Then I'll let it guide me too. Perhaps the town needs more than just warm bread, it needs a little light in corners it often forgets." Evelyn realized that her presence, and the lanterns, was subtle but meaningful. Small gestures could ripple outward, spreading quiet joy, one warm glow at a time. Later that week, Evelyn found herself walking along the stone bridge spanning the river. Lanterns hovered above the water, reflecting in soft ripples. She held her pocket lantern up, letting its glow mingle with the floating lights. A fisherman leaned on the rail, watching her quietly. "The river hasn't looked like this in years," he murmured. "It feels alive." Evelyn smiled gently. "It is. Sometimes we just need to notice the little lights, and the world seems to wake a bit." The cat padded beside her, tail flicking, eyes glinting in the golden glow. Lanterns drifted closer, as though greeting both of them. Evelyn felt a deep calm. The town, the river, the gardens, they were all connected in ways that didn't need explanation. Presence and attention were enough. The keeper appeared silently at the bridge's end. "The lanterns are patient," he said softly. "They wait for those who notice, and then they reveal themselves. You are learning well." A quiet festival was held at the town square again, but this time, Evelyn noticed something different. More lanterns hovered above the crowd, responding to laughter, music, and footsteps. Children pointed, adults smiled quietly, and the townsfolk seemed lighter somehow. Evelyn walked among them, pocket lantern glowing steadily. The cat trailed beside her, wings flickering faintly. She realized the lanterns were guiding attention, gently encouraging wonder and delight in everyday moments. The lantern keeper appeared briefly beside her. "You see now, don't you? The garden is not confined to walls. Wherever light is tended, it blooms." Evelyn nodded, watching lanterns twirl around the musicians and dip near the food stalls. I understand. I just need to walk with them, quietly. And so she did, stepping slowly through the square, letting her presence, and the glow of her lantern, be enough to touch hearts in the softest, most ordinary ways. Evelyn discovered a narrow alley she had never noticed before, tucked between the bakery and the candlemaker's shop. Lanterns hovered there, soft and steady, lighting the cobblestones like a gentle river of gold. The cat led the way, tail curling, pausing every few steps to glance back as if to say, "Follow closely." Evelyn walked slowly, noticing a small bench beneath a creeping ivy vine. The lanterns floated just above it, humming faintly, and she felt a warmth in her chest. This was a space made for quiet reflection. A passerby paused, drawn by the gentle glow. "It feels calm here," the woman said softly. Evelyn smiled, realizing the lanterns could guide people towards stillness, if only they noticed. The pocket lantern pulsed gently in response, as though echoing her understanding. Sometimes, she thought, magic wasn't about spectacle. It was about attention. The following evening, Evelyn passed the music school. A soft melody floated into the street, accompanied by a lantern hovering near the doorway, pulsating with rhythm. Inside, a music teacher guided a student's hands along the piano keys. Evelyn held her pocket lantern just outside. The light seemed to breathe with the music, settling on each note as if amplifying it for the world to hear. The student looked up, eyes wide. "Miss Evelyn, the light, it's like it's playing with us." Evelyn chuckled softly. "Sometimes the world hums along with what we do," she whispered. The cat twined around her legs, wings flickering to the rhythm. Even the teacher paused, smiling, feeling the subtle presence of the light. Evelyn realized that these small, quiet moments of joy could ripple through lives in ways no one would notice fully, yet everyone could feel. One night, Evelyn climbed the gentle hill at the edge of town, lantern in hand. From there, she could see the rooftops, the winding streets, and dozens of faint glows hovering above homes, shops, and gardens. The cat padded beside her, wings flickering against the dark. Evelyn breathed deeply. She could feel the pulse of the town, the quiet connections spreading like threads of light between people and places. The keeper appeared silently behind her. "Do you see now?" he asked, voice soft as the night wind. "The garden isn't just here, or there, or in your pocket. It's everywhere someone notices." Evelyn nodded, eyes tracing the lights. "I understand. It's not mine to keep. It's only mine to share, carefully, gently." The pocket lantern pulsed warmly, almost like a heartbeat, and she felt a quiet pride. Even in ordinary streets, ordinary lives, there could be magic, soft, patient, and enduring. The cat purred, wings folding neatly as it settled at her feet. And Evelyn smiled, knowing she would continue walking, one lantern at a time. Evelyn found herself in a small courtyard tucked between two rows of cottages. Lanterns hovered above, glowing softly, illuminating ivy-draped walls and worn stone benches. The cat prowled ahead, tail flicking, pausing near a lantern that drifted low over a sleeping dog. Evelyn smiled. Even the quietest corners of town seemed to welcome the light. An elderly man tending potted herbs glanced up and murmured, "It feels as if the night is listening." Evelyn nodded gently. "Maybe it is," she said. She held her pocket lantern high, letting it mingle with the hovering lights. For a moment, the courtyard felt suspended, as if time itself had softened. The keeper appeared at the far end, staff in hand, lantern swaying gently. "This is what I meant," he said softly. "Even the smallest places can bloom with light if someone tends them carefully." Evelyn's heart swelled. She realized that tending the lights wasn't just for the garden, it was for the whole town, one quiet corner at a time. The next evening, Evelyn wandered past the bakery and the schoolhouse, noticing a subtle symphony of sounds, laughter, footsteps, a distant violin, the soft rustle of leaves. Lanterns hovered near every note, pulsing gently in rhythm. She paused near the bridge, holding her pocket lantern. "They respond to everything," she whispered to the cat, who twined around her legs. Every small sound, every little gesture. The lantern keeper appeared silently beside her. Exactly. Magic is subtle, he said. It moves with the town, with life itself. You've learned to notice, and to share. Evelyn felt the glow of her lantern deepen. She realized the town was alive in a new way, not just because of the lights, but because people were beginning, even unconsciously, to see them. To feel them. The cat purred, wings flickering faintly in the evening breeze, and Evelyn understood that the garden's magic had traveled far beyond its gate. That night, Evelyn walked through the town square. Children waved to her from the fountain, adults paused to smile at the glow of lanterns above doorways, and shopkeepers lingered a moment longer at their windows, watching. Her pocket lantern pulsed softly, a steady heartbeat among dozens of tiny lights. The cat led the way, flitting between shadows and lamplight, and the keeper followed silently, letting Evelyn take the lead. You've done well, he said softly, voice blending with the evening air. The garden grows through you now. Evelyn smiled, feeling the warmth of the lanterns and the gentle connection weaving through the town. She realized her role was not to command, but to witness, to carry light quietly, and to share it without expectation. The night stretched calmly, filled with the soft hum of lanterns, laughter, and quiet steps. Evelyn walked slowly, savoring each moment, knowing that in every corner, every alley, every heart that noticed, the garden lived on. Evelyn returned to the garden after several nights walking through town. The iron gate welcomed her like an old friend, and the cat padded ahead, tail curling. Lanterns hung from branches and floated above the pond, glowing softly. The keeper was already there, leaning on his staff. You've carried the garden far, he said quietly. But it is always good to return. Evelyn smiled, taking in the warm, familiar glow. It feels fuller somehow, she murmured. The lanterns pulsed gently, as if acknowledging her words. She wandered past the willow tree to the bench where she had first sat, noticing lanterns dancing faintly along the clover path. Each one seemed to carry a memory, a laugh, a song, or a sigh of quiet contentment. Evelyn realized that this was what the garden had always been teaching her: light grows when it is shared, and the simplest gestures can nurture the world. Evelyn crouched by the pond, holding her pocket lantern above the water. Its reflection shimmered across the rippling surface, surrounded by the soft glow of dozens more. Do you remember? She whispered to the lantern, as if it could listen. She recounted a story from her childhood, the way her grandmother had hummed while baking, and the story of her first walk through the garden. The cat curled beside her, purring. Lanterns drifted closer, hovering in a gentle circle around her, pulsing as though in quiet response. The keeper joined her, his presence calm and steady. The lanterns remember what we tell them, he said. And when we share, they carry the memory for others, too. Evelyn smiled, understanding that the garden was more than a place. It was a living repository of attention, care, and stories. Every small gesture, every gentle act, could ripple outward like soft waves on the pond. That night, Evelyn walked home slowly, the garden behind her, the town before her. Lanterns hovered above cottages, street corners, and rooftops, pulsing faintly in sync with her heartbeat. The cat walked beside her, wings flickering gently, and the pocket lantern rested warm in her palm. From her window, she saw the town asleep, shadows softened by gentle pools of light. Children dreamed, shopkeepers rested, and the quiet hum of the lanterns wrapped the streets in calm. The keeper appeared quietly at the edge of her garden gate. You've learned, he said softly. The garden blooms wherever you notice, wherever you care. Evelyn nodded, her eyes tracing the glow above the rooftops. I understand now. It's not the lanterns that need tending, it's attention, presence, and quiet care. The cat purred, settling on the windowsill. Evelyn smiled, feeling the deep warmth of a night well lived, knowing that the garden, the town, and all the little lights she had carried would continue to glow, quietly, gently, forever. Evelyn climbed the gentle hill overlooking the town one last evening. The lanterns hovered everywhere, subtle and numerous, their light mingling with stars. The cat walked beside her, wings flickering faintly in the twilight. From this height, she could see the streets, the gardens, the pond, the bakery, and even the library, all softly illuminated. She realized the garden's magic had spread through observation, care, and presence, not by force, but by quiet attention. The keeper appeared beside her, staff in hand, lantern swaying gently. "Do you feel it now?" he asked. "The garden is everywhere. You've helped it bloom." Evelyn nodded, taking a deep breath. "Yes. It's alive. Not just in one place, but in every small act of care, every notice of beauty." The cat purred, wings folding neatly as it settled at her feet. Lanterns drifted past in slow, drifting arcs, as though acknowledging the harmony Evelyn had helped create. Walking home, Evelyn noticed lanterns in windows she hadn't seen before. A child reading a storybook had a soft glow nearby, a baker's apprentice hummed quietly with a lantern at her side. Even Mrs. Harrow's roses shimmered faintly in moonlight. Evelyn realized the garden's magic had become part of the town, extending into lives without anyone needing to understand exactly how. She smiled, pressing her pocket lantern close. The lights weren't hers, they were everyone's, waiting to be noticed and cherished. The cat brushed against her leg. "It seems we've been very busy tonight," she whispered. The lantern pulsed gently in her hand, echoing her joy. The next evening, the keeper led Evelyn back to the garden. Lanterns swirled overhead, reflecting softly in the pond. The air was fragrant with mint and chamomile, and the willow tree swayed gently. "You've learned all you need," the keeper said softly. "The garden will continue to bloom wherever you walk. Your presence has taught it patience, attention, and quiet care." Evelyn smiled. "I will visit, and I will notice. But I understand now, it's not about keeping the garden. It's about letting it be." The keeper nodded, then disappeared slowly into the soft glow of lanterns, leaving Evelyn with the quiet hum of the garden and her small, warm pocket lantern. That night, Evelyn walked through the town with the cat and her lantern. Every corner, alley, and rooftop shimmered faintly. She passed the bakery, the library, the bridge, the courtyard, each place holding a quiet reflection of the garden's light. She realized that even without the keeper, even without the central garden, the magic continued. Presence, care, and attention had taken root in the town. She was simply one thread in a tapestry of soft light. The cat padded beside her, wings faintly glowing. Evelyn whispered, "Thank you, for everything." The lantern pulsed gently in response, a heartbeat shared between her, the cat, and the world she had learned to notice. Evelyn returned to the garden one last time before sleeping. Lanterns floated in the familiar paths and over the pond, humming softly in the night air. She sat on the willow bench, cat curled at her feet, and let herself breathe deeply. The garden had taught her patience, attention, and quiet joy. She understood now that it existed not just behind the gate, but in every act of noticing, every kind word, every small gesture of care. The lanterns pulsed warmly, reflecting in the pond like scattered moons. Evelyn leaned back, listening to the soft hum, the gentle sway of branches, and the heartbeat of the town alive with subtle light. She closed her eyes, knowing that wherever she went, the garden would follow, quiet, patient, glowing softly in the hearts of those who noticed. And as the cat purred, wings flickering faintly, Evelyn finally felt completely at home in a world that was both ordinary and endlessly magical.